Hello plant people, how are you guys doing today? If you're new around here, my name is Ashley and I'm a soil scientist. On this channel, I like to take that science and apply to all things plants. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about companion cropping for benefits. So if you guys watched my earlier video, which kind of talks about companion cropping and how it's a little bit overstressed that certain crops will actually kill off or harm another crop, then go check that out if you haven't. However, this is the subsequent side of this story. So this is the other side of the story and how we can companion crop plants to actually prevent pests and the science way of doing this, so the proper way of doing this. And I'm going to save a personal story to the end of what we actually used to do in the field for research when I worked in a research department that looked at this whole concept, but on a farming scale. If you're looking for a way to support this channel, because you guys are always wondering why we aren't big enough yet, which I completely agree with you, be sure to actually share the video. It makes a huge difference. So share it to Facebook, Reddit forums, Discords, whatever the case is. It helps enormously. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to let me know what zone you're in and where you hail from, because it makes it easier for me to curate videos better suited towards you guys. So let's jump into the concept of companion planting for the benefit of pest control. So after I posted that initial video kind of talking about how companion planting wasn't that important because it really doesn't affect the plants negatively if you plant two plants together that aren't supposed to be together, because if you do the proper spacing and the proper lighting requirements and the proper soil requirements, it's very unlikely that you're going to suppress another crop. However, a lot of you pointed out the idea of intercropping or cropping in clads, as some of you wanted to call it. And let's jump into what that is, because I think that's a concept that is new-ish, but also very, very large and has a lot of different names, but all means the same thing. So the technical name for this form of cropping is called trap cropping. So trap cropping or trap planting in a garden helps prevent pests from completely decimating our garden. And probably the most common form of trap cropping would be marigolds. And we're going to get into that and maybe debunk that a little bit, because I think it's a little bit overinflated as to what a marigold can and cannot do. What I won't be talking about this, and I can make a separate video for, if you just let me know in the comments down below to give me an idea whether or not you want to see it, would be the Three Sisters method or the Hidasta method. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but both of those methods are actually Native American methods of planting crops, and they are their own subset of companion cropping unto themselves, which aren't really related to the very methodical method of trap cropping. So the common misconception when it comes to trap cropping is that aromatic features of plants help prevent or bring in certain pests. And that's not always the case. It's actually been proven that it's highly unlikely that the aromatic scents is what brings or deters pollinators or bugs in and out of a cropping system, mostly because it's open to the air and therefore just natural air flows don't build up enough of a scent to lure stuff in. So it's been slightly debunked that it's the aromatic features that cause the benefits of trap cropping. Actual application of trap cropping or companion planting for the prevention of pests is to give the pest a crop that either attracts the pest in so that it will only feed on the crop that is the undesirable crop. So for example, young soft plants such as lettuce is a great trap crop because it is a lot easier to chew on, it's more malleable to an insect than something like a giant tomato plant, for example. So the theory is that the pest will chew on the lettuce rather than the tomato plant because the lettuce is more appealing to that said pest. The opposite side of this is that if you have a tomato plant and you're trying to bring in pollinators, you would set up a trap crop to attract in pollinators. So that would be crops that have really high levels of flowering or attractive flowerings, attractive colors, that sort of thing. So there are a few different ways to set up a trap crop. The first one being multiple lines. So this method would be you have a trap crop on the outside, you have your harvestable crop, so the crop you're going to harvest from, then you have another trap crop, harvestable crop, trap crop, etc. and so forth in lines across the entire field or across the entire garden. The other method or the other way of doing a trap crop would be through the push-pull method. And this one is probably my most favorite. So this method would be putting a trap crop on the top two areas of your cash crop. So you would have your main area would be a trap crop, and then the bottom would be a trap crop. Then the outsides would actually be push crops. So these would be things that nitrogen fix. So legumes would be kind of your only one. So you would do peas, beans, chickpeas, lentils, that sort of thing on the outsides. And then inside of that block, you could either do all cash crops, so the crop you want to harvest from, or you would do a multiple line method where you would do push crop, push crop, regular crop, all the way the whole length, bordered on top and bottom by that trap crop. And then the last method would be the dead end method. So dead end is essentially referring to you're putting a dead end on the life cycle of the problem bug. So you would put a trap crop on all four sides, and you would have your cash crop in the middle. So that's the crop that you want to harvest from. That trap crop would then lure in all the bugs that want to eat your cash crop. And because of that, they would survive or live in the trap crop. And because the trap crop doesn't have the proper amenities, I guess you could say, for that bug to survive and reproduce, the life cycle of it would end, which typically, if done right, can reduce the continuation of life for those pests up to 60%, they've seen in some studies. So there are some things you need to know when it comes to companion planting in this sense, or setting up a trap crop in general. And the first one being is you need to know what pest you're preventing. So you need to know what the problem plant or the problem pest is, so you can determine what crop you need to grow. So say you have an issue with cabbage moths and you want the crop that you harvest to be cabbage. What you need to do is you need to find a crop that cabbage moths also like. So you need to do some research, and then you need to plant that crop in whatever method you choose around the cabbage, so that the plant that is eaten is the trap crop. You're not going to harvest from the trap crop. The intent is that the trap crop just simply will not exist at all by the end of the season, because all the bugs or the pests would have eaten it. Conversely, if you're using a trap crop to trap pollinators or bring pollinators in, you need to do your research for what pollinators you need for that crop that you're trying to grow, so that you can attract those into the area in hopes of getting some fertilization or just switching of pollen within the main crop you want to harvest from. And this brings me to my next point, which kind of, I just don't understand it 100%. I'm not able to totally conceptualize the point of this, mostly because if you have a tasty morsel of a crop that is cabbage and you're putting a trap crop around it that's tasty for things that like cabbage, are you not just inviting more pests into the garden? Because now you're planting not just a little area of cabbage, you're planting a ginormous area of food for this animal or for this pest. So that's kind of where a little bit of my hang up is. So what I would do to alter this or make it just slightly more beneficial, and is I would use more of a disguise method. So I would intercrop or companion plant with plants that maybe cabbage moths really, really don't like, or they just don't have a taste for. So look up a plant that cabbage moths just really don't enjoy at all, and then I would interplant with that, because then you could disguise the cabbage with a plant that the moth just really isn't interested in at all. So I think that would probably be a better method of doing this. which also brings me to my next point, which is you need a lot of these plants. So the idea of simply just throwing a couple marigolds into a garden sporadically and not helping to prevent the pest is really unlikely. You need a blanket of area, meaning when you plant a trap crop, it has to be overplanted. It has to be very, very thick. And that is because you need enough food there to satisfy the potential pests coming into the area. So you need a relatively thick border around these plants. It's not a onesie twosie thing. It is the whole ground is covered in marigolds type situation. So, which brings me into my last and final, which is marigolds are super popular right now as a companion plant that prevents pests. And there's very little science to back this up. The only thing that marigolds are known to prevent is one type of harmful nematode. That is it. Other than that, marigolds are not going to work miracles on your garden. They're especially not going to work miracles on your garden unless you plant a ton of them. Like, I'm talking a ton of them. So you have to over apply them to your garden. With that being said, trap cropping definitely has its benefits. It's been used for many, many years, but you need a thick border, and that thick border you have on your crop needs to be jam-packed with plants, and you need to select your plants based on what you're trying to prevent or what you're trying to bring in. And we used to do this for the opposite reason. So I used to work on a research team that was researching a certain type of pesticide to help prevent against fusarium. So if you don't know what that is, it's an infection that can happen in certain crops. And the best way to increase the spore count or to increase the count of critters that cause this in the crop is to actually increase moisture and reduce wind and put in trap crops that help attract more of the bugs, for lack of a better term. And so what we did is we put our crop in the middle, and then around the entire outside of the plot we planted corn. We did 4 rows of corn, and we seeded it at a frequency that was 3 times higher than you would seed to actually gain a crop from it. So because of that and the density we put it at, we actually were able to increase our colonies within the plot. But our corn itself, while it never really got infected or harmed and it never acted as a true trap crop, it served its purpose, but not a true trap crop, it didn't produce any corn cobs because it was too densely packed, and that dense packing resulted in very, very little transfer into seeds. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's kind of my experience with it. It did work for us, but this is in a big field. And like I said, we had a very thick border of corn that was planted at very high density. So if you're choosing to do this, you want to make sure your trap crop has a very thick planting area relative to your crop that you want to harvest from, and that the density in which these plants are planted is very, very high. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments down below. Give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you've made it this far, because you very clearly enjoy the channel, and let me know in the comments down below what method you like to use for trap cropping, and if you use any of the formal technical methods, or if you just kind of do a free-for-all plant whatever, wherever type thing. And also let me know if you've seen any benefits of marigolds, because the scientific journals basically say it's fake, unfortunately, unless it's with nematodes. Nematodes it works for. The rest of them, apparently, not so much. Ella's getting very sassy right now, so I'll let you guys go, and I will talk to you later. Bye!